Iran's direct and indirect war on Israel is progressing at whatever pace Iran decides it progresses, as we have been seeing not just since October 7th, but basically for decades in the Middle East. Israel and the West talk about their desire to de-escalate, their desire to avoid war. The other side talks about their desire to destroy Israel, ultimately to destroy America if they can do so. Um, and this is continuing nowadays. So Iran is stepping up its rhetoric, and its war of words is backed up by actual war so far. So Iran is now saying the next attack, the retaliation for Israel's retaliation to the previous attack, is going to be something we've never seen before. And something much bigger. And look, what they know what they mean by this, probably. We don't. And James, you said in a recent episode, there's over 200 ballistic missiles were fired in the previous attack, and what if there's a nuclear warhead on one of them? And as far as Western intelligence knows, or at least tells us, Iran doesn't yet have a nuclear bomb. Then again, intelligence has been wrong. I think if I'm not mistaken, with North Korea, we only found out they have a nuke when they like detonated one in a test. So. But even beyond that, a chemical warhead on one of these ballistic missiles is something we know Iran has the capability of doing. And even beyond that, if it's just ballistic missiles, as we keep saying and we'll keep saying here, the same exact attack by Iran where 200 ballistic missiles either fall in open spaces or are shot down, the same exact number of missiles, but two of them don't fall in open spaces, aren't shot down, but fall on two, residential high rises and kill hundreds of people, will get a different response from Israel. So Israel is now once again in this stage that it has always had, like it had with the Palestinians until October 7th, like it had with Lebanon, with Hezbollah, fully approved by the Lebanese government for over a year, like it has with the Palestinians in the West Bank. Israel waits for the other side not just to attack, because it attacks all the time, but to be successful enough in an attack in killing enough Israelis that it can justify itself to those who think it shouldn't exist on why it's defending itself. And this is such an absurd situation. I was watching some news program on Israeli television today on one of the channels that isn't the religious right-wing channel, and they are not very pro-Israel, the other channels, and they were saying this is really an absurd situation. We're waiting for the next attack, and then we're going to do something that's probably a bit more than the previous one, and how much more depends on the success of the attack. Yeah, how is this happening? What are we living through here? And what can we expect to see from Iran? Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm joined by James Valliant. James, your thoughts on the where we are at the moment, which is I'm not sure we know where we are, but to some extent we do.
Well, the thing is there's a war going on. There has been a war going on. And in any other war, you would say defeat the enemy. But no, let's preserve the enemy because we don't want to have any escalation. Now, that's insane. An aggressor starts attacking you. You suffer barrage after barrage of ballistic missile attacks directly on you. After and during all of the attacks from your paid proxies, uh, just through the proxies, even if it were just Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, that would be an act of aggression by Iran, who funds and trains these people and gives them weapons and gives them all the moral support in the world. Of course, just through the proxies, but back up even before that, just the threats would have been enough to, but let's say, okay, you want something more than words. What does it take? You step up the ladder of escalation that has already occurred, ladies and gentlemen. The attacks through the proxies, the relentless attacks through the proxies after the atrocities of October 7th. And then you go through two barrages of ballistic missile attacks, and you say, well, should we, are we really at war? Do we wait? Should we really wait until Israelis get killed? That is a murderous policy. The Israelis are letting down their own people. They're endangering their own people, saying we have to die, we have to bleed and suffer before we really do anything about this constant aggression. Imagine someone is, shooting at you from behind a rock with his gun. Bang, 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 bang. And so far he's only done, grazed you or hit, had minor damage, if any, no damage of any, just left some property damage or something. At that point you say, oh, well, we're secure. The danger's over. The assault is gone. Just because the guy is still back there shooting his gun and is threatening more. So we shouldn't have to wait for this new threat. But now the new threat is added on top of these two significant direct attacks from Iran, only to have America, by the way, say, oh, well, don't hit their oil facilities, don't hit their nuclear facilities. We don't want to escalate this too much, Israel. But think about it. Iran has gone after Netanyahu himself. Like I say, it's a good thing the Netanyahus weren't home when it happened. Buildings have been destroyed by Hezbollah rockets. Children on a football field have been killed by Hezbollah rockets, whether they want to admit it or do admit it and then take it back afterwards. They are killing children in Israel. They are bombing buildings, including the residence of the Netanyahus. I mean, think about that. Iran, there has to be a systematic, full scale, no stops attack on Iran. And America, by the way, has to fully support Israel in doing it. I would suggest we help Israel in doing it. And that must include the oil facilities and must include the nuclear facilities. And thank goodness that the Israeli response, from what we're hearing, says if you do anything else, no, what the hell is that? Is it crazy? If you do respond, then the nuclear facilities are on the target list again. Well, I suppose we should be grateful that that statement was even made. But as you say, how absurd and ridiculous that they aren't already the targets of Israeli and American bombs. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, and it's great that they're on the table, at least again rhetorically. But we don't need to hear that. I don't need to hear it in advance. I'd love to hear it after the fact, and we can have one of our celebratory episodes that we have. Yeah, it's especially nice when most of what we do is pretty
But you make a
negative.
really good point about chemical weapons. These
Yeah.
SOBs, I mean, geez, does anyone remember the recent history in Syria and the use of nasty chemical weapons? Do you think for a minute they would hesitate in using chemical weapons against Israel or against a
Yes,
Western country?
I do, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I absolutely think Israel should be worried about that. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Simon, for all becoming members of our YouTube channel. You now have access to our 7 days of peak off. I may have miscounted, and it might be eight. It's at least 7 days of peak off videos and content in a row. Today at 8 p.m. UK time, so 2 hours and 20 minutes from now. Another video with Michael Leibowitz asking Dr. Peikoff, yeah, Daniel, correct me, it is eight. A video with Michael Leibowitz asking Dr. Peikoff a question. There's already the video of Adam
Professor,
Ossoff
yeah.
asking Dr. Peikoff a question about the election. So, and that was about Israel. So,
Members
yeah,
only, though. This stuff is members only. So just become a member and you'll
yeah,
get all of this material. The question and answer that we released from Professor Mossoff and Leonard Peikoff was a great one. It's well worth it, ladies and gentlemen. Become a member.
yeah. And we're not going to spoil the answer, but Michael Leibowitz's question was about birthright citizenship and flag burning and Trump's position on that, and um, Dr. Peikoff's opinion on Trump's position. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says Iran might attack from Iraq. I read, yeah, I also read that, and this is a point about Iranian proxies. They should all be destroyed as well. Even if the Iranian regime is removed from power, even if the proxies are running on fumes, they should be destroyed completely. And yeah, the sooner the better. Again, Iran will likely do what it says and attack Israel for the third time this year, but it is attacking Israel daily through its proxies, and so it is important to destroy those.
I
Um,
would just add America should I mean, Iran, Lebanon, the Houthis, proxies in Iraq or Syria. America should be actively helping Israel in those matters, don't you think? They're matters of international peace. It's civilization under assault here, ladies and gentlemen. There's no other way of looking at it. My
Yeah.
country, fortunately, I don't see whoever wins the election in a few days. I don't see America realistically taking the sort of action that would be required to defend civilization, which has been under systematic assault here. But when it comes from these entities, these proxies that actually have cooperation or are taking over parts of governments, as in Yemen or Lebanon, and certainly in Iran, America should be actively helping wipe out these proxies. They're killing Americans, they're attacking American interests, they're attacking international shipping. And in all such matters, surely the entire civilized world has an interest. And the strength of America should be deployed to take these monsters out. But I fear that a real systematic taking them out is not in the cards, or at least anytime soon. And they're going to wait for more people to die, for more Israelis and Americans to die before they do anything. That is sick. And that is the governments of Israel and America letting down on their responsibility to protect their own citizens. It's really shameful and insane.
Yeah. Akira says, I have to read this. Akira says, whoever got the idea of splitting the Dr. Peikoff conversation is a genius. I'm thinking Razi.
I'm
I think you're
thinking that
right.
was, I can actually confirm that. It was Mr. Ginsburg who came up with that brilliant idea.
And thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, if Harris wins, expect nothing good. Yeah, I've had I know quite a few people on the channel disagree with me on this. I've said that Trump, when it comes to Israel, if we're just talking about Israel, is very likely to be less bad, is the way I put it. And I think some people think he will be significantly better, which is not a tall order. Being
No,
better
but I
than
think he would be. He's expressed with his attitude that the nuclear facilities should be on, for example, with Iran. As Leonard Peikoff recently pointed out, he really likes it when Trump says, "We will blow you to smithereens if you continue to threaten Americans." Now that I like.
Yeah, but from Israel's perspective, the reason I've said I wouldn't vote is because I think there's bad policies from both of them, and even if one is slightly less bad than the other, just for me to actually physically go and vote, I don't think I can stand the nausea. But anyway, my point here is from
As there
Israel's
is a
perspective.
marginal difference in the two. Let's not be wedded to an abstraction. A
Yeah.
significant difference is worth considering when it's a
But from Israel's perspective, Israel has only one issue it should care about when it comes to the U.S. election, which
This
is
is
Israel.
true. This is
And
true.
from that perspective, I'm wondering. We talked yesterday about this, the talk about a ceasefire. There are ceasefire talks now, and there's speculation that there might be a ceasefire in the coming days. Why would you do that? Why would you do that ever? Of course, but why would you do that right before an election? If Trump was upset when Netanyahu called Biden after he won the election, how upset might he be if Israel seems to be? This is almost like interfering in the election to back Biden if there's a ceasefire now. So let's hope that doesn't happen. And you said earlier, how did you put it about the chemical weapons? Does anybody think for a second that Iran will
Yes,
hesitate?
you
And
have
the
reasons to
reason
think there might not be a chemical attack. So,
well, the reason I think they would hesitate is
yeah,
because they're worried about their own existence, and the more severe an attack, the more that they realize Israel can get rid alone of the Iranian regime. I think that's probably been made clear from the previous attack. Um,
that's one of the
but
things to note here.
but the
When
thing is,
Iran,
but
yeah, I'm
just to make
sorry.
this point, that Israel is, while Iran is worried about the Iranian regime is worried about its own existence, Israel is sending a very clear message. Don't worry. This is a little tit for tat. It's you shoot at us, we'll shoot at you. And then we'll all go to have coffee in the UN cafeteria or whatever. Like this is Israel sending a message to Iran that you can keep going because our response will come, but it's not going to be too bad.
That's exactly it. But I'll tell you, with the point you alluded to there, what the Iranian threat does suggest is that there was significant damage. and that Israel does have, and just looking at it, taking out their air defenses, being able to fly at will over Iran and hitting at least some military targets, does tell you something. And that attack must have done some real damage. It's hard to assess the damage when Iran is not being honest. We don't have people there on the ground giving us, who can freely give us real-time information. But the threat suggests to me that Israel did some real damage and scared Iran to the point that it's now clear that Israel can reach whatever target in Iran they want whenever they want. And that's got to send a shiver up the spine of the mullahs in Tehran.
Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, but at least Creepy Joe is on his way to Delaware where he should stay. Why creepy? Or do you have something against old men who like sniffing little girls' hair? I mean, I'm not sure why the word creepy is James. Sorry if I'm making you uncomfortable with my commentary on Biden. But yes, I am happy that Biden is going away. Just remember, we have almost 3 more months of Biden.
Yeah, more than 2 months left of his official presidency, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, we've had to endure all of November and December and first weeks of January, but yikes. But that's an interesting period, though, for Israel to think about taking advantage of. Whoever wins, because there's no new president yet, and the president who's going out is going out permanently. So we're in flux. American official policy, in many regards, especially foreign policy, because it's a new president, is in a degree of flux, and that might be a good opportunity for Israel to take advantage of, so that the pressure from Washington can be ignored. Seems to me.
Yeah, and Christian said, not Christian, Christopher says you might miss him. And I wouldn't put it that way because, but yeah, I do think Harris. It's hard to imagine how anybody could be worse on Israel. Although if you watch the reality show that follows this show, and we're going to talk about Jill Stein, maybe we can get a clue of how somebody can be worse than Biden. But
Yes,
Harris
it
is
can
very
be done, ladies and gentlemen.
Harris is absolutely planning to try to be worse, and we've heard statements to that effect. We heard it from Bernie Sanders. I don't know if it can count as official, but I haven't heard her try to walk it back.
Oh,
Yeah,
Bernie
the U.S.
Sanders is reassuring the progressive left. Don't worry. She's not really changed her opinion on no fossil fuels and no fracking. She hasn't changed her opinion on totally socialized medicine, other issues. She hasn't. Obviously it's BS because all you get from her is no explanation of how she changed her mind, other than she needs to get elected. And that's what Senator Sanders admits. She's saying whatever. That's what he says out loud. Kamala, who's a senator colleague of his, very close into the Senate when they were together. Which don't worry, folks. She's just saying what she needs to say to get elected, in effect, and that's not very reassuring. And from her previous run for president, those statements do paint her as the most socialist-leaning candidate in American history. And on Israel, come on, she is with the Hamas wing, the Bernie Sanders AOC wing, the Rashida Tlaib wing of American politics, and that could be even worse than Biden.
And
Um,
yeah, and remember, this is the worst administration as far as policy on Israel is concerned, at least since the 1950s, if not ever. And yeah, and unfortunately, we might get to see what worse would mean. And
yeah.
yeah, um, yeah,
Absolutely. Um, and then again, Trump is an unknown factor because, of course, he's a pragmatist and unprincipled. I mean, we have a hard time even knowing what he might do, and it might be a matter of emotions. And that's not a secure basis to be able to predict a secure future. On the other hand, as Leonard Peikoff says, his unpredictability might scare America's enemies, even though Trump is willing to sit down and talk to any dictator.
um, yeah. I'll read Chandler's comment in a second, but just thinking, I'm thinking of like people like Biden being accused of being, like Chamberlain, and I think that's offensive to Chamberlain, really. Chamberlain did eventually go to war,
He
whereas
did.
Biden is much more like Quisling. Biden would say would demand that Poland, what de-escalate the situation and would really blame Hitler's victims, because that is literally what he's doing right now. So yeah, if
Absolutely.
yeah. And thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says Bill Clinton backs Israel. That's refreshing. Well, I haven't seen that, but yeah, people when they're out of office, I mean, we can trace a lot of this back to Clinton. Obviously, the Oslo Accords were signed under Clinton and with his encouragement, let's call it that. And when America encourages Israel, it's the kind of encouragement it's difficult to say no to. But yeah, James, I wanted to read Chandler's comments to you and get your response. Chandler says, based on my general sense of what's going on and not specific quotes, it seems like Elizabeth Warren was way more socialism oriented than Kamala, or at least the same. I'm not sure what makes Kamala the biggest socialist ever. James.
Oh, well, Elizabeth Warren is basically the same camp, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris. They were allies and closely connected, and all you have to do is listen to Kamala's positions at the time. She's for fully socialized medicine, the elimination of private health insurance in America. She's for eliminating fossil fuels and all fracking, and she would have had strict rules about that. And she hangs out with those people. She agrees with them on just about everything, from Supreme Court reform to reform, and I'll put that in quotes, to everything else. So, yeah, I don't see a big distinction between Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris. To say she is the biggest, but come on, she was a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal, which would radically transform the American economy, which Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders were also advocates of. So all those folks of that ilk are roughly the same. But that's who you're voting for if you're voting for Harris, ladies and gentlemen. You're voting for the most outright socialist candidate or socialist leaning candidate in American history. Worse than McGovern, worse than Obama, worse than any of the other progressives, in my view, that the left has put forth.
And just an ARCUK historical anecdote, Elizabeth Warren was the person who earned the first ever Saturday episode of the Daily Objective back when this was a weekday only show, when she tweeted about Amazon that some sort of threat about how they're not going to allow companies to come after senators when Amazon criticized Elizabeth Warren about something, and Amazon Twitter responded to her, calling her out on it, and it was one of the greatest tweets, certainly that, much more than we would expect from a company that probably doesn't want to take political sides too clearly. Daniel says, for the Kamala comment, Stossel did a video on it. Kamala's economic plan was the most expensive, more than Bernie or Warren. Her plan now is much different, but this is from 2020, but just for past context.
Maybe she is the
Yes,
worst.
the plans change, from when you're a senator
Yeah.
until when you're trying to get
Comparative differences that way are hard when you're that far over on comparatively in the American political spectrum. It's hard to make these distinctions. Well, maybe she is the worst. I don't know, but she's certainly in the same camp with Bernie and Senator Warren. No question in my mind. Yeah, and Americanism is dying, ladies and gentlemen. You've got forces on the right who want to use the antitrust laws to go after social media and censor them. And now you've got forces on the left openly calling for outright censorship, like Elizabeth Warren. How dare they criticize me, a United States senator, and Waltz and Harris have absolutely coming out in favor of censoring hate speech and, quote, misinformation. So it's sad to see Americanism declining as such. Our once principled, commitment to free speech is dying on both the right and the left, all around us. I'm sad to report.
Yeah, and the commitment of this administration, the commitment they have that isn't dying, is the commitment to stop Israel from defending itself while, claiming this is a way of preventing war and knowing full well that it is a way of delaying war until somebody else, hopefully until somebody else is in office, which is the kind of thing.
Perpetuating war, perpetuating war. If we protect dictatorships like Iran, which dictatorships, as Ayn Rand said, are the cause of war in the modern world. And if you protect dictators, you are in fact guaranteeing perpetual war. So they've got it exactly backwards.
Yeah, and look, the desire to avoid war is understandable in the sense that war is hell. No nobody, one side maybe wins a war, but nobody really benefits from there being a war. But a war now an all-out war, which is what we think should happen as soon as possible with Iran and all its proxies, would be very bad. Even if America gets into it with Israel, would be bad. But long term would have very very good benefits for the Middle East. Whereas avoiding it now guarantees that war will happen, but it'll happen on their timeline and would be potentially deadly, could be the end of Israel. Look, Israel could have gone to war in Gaza and taken out Hamas at any point, certainly from after the disengagement and until October 6th. But it wanted to de-escalate any escalation that there was. It wanted to avoid war, wanted to talk about peace and so on, and it got October 7th, um, and everything that has happened since.
That's exactly it. October 7th, you're asking for another October 7th. Only bringing it back to the original topic. Iran may not have a nuclear weapon yet, but there are various experts who have various estimates. Some people say they're weeks, months. Some people say just days away. Some people say they could do it now. So various experts have different opinions. They may not have the bomb now, but they may be getting really close. And that is terrifying. Now, tell me Hamas is gone? Well, wait a minute. They're still hostages. Tell me Hezbollah's been taken care of? No, there's still missiles coming. No, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't even addressed the proximate causes of the problem. Hamas and Hezbollah, much less addressed Iran and all the other regional proxies. And until we cut the head off Iran, this will continue. It will be a perpetual war. And only at some point, Iran will have a nuclear bomb. We cannot, civilization cannot afford to wait for that to happen.
Yeah, there's a comment in the chat. I'm not sure why it's directed at us, but it says your denial of the reality made you face the Yom Kippur War. Israel's denial of reality did yeah, the contrast between 1967, where Israel was fully aware of what's coming and prevented it, acted in order to prevent it, and 1973, when Golda Meir, who gave Bibi a run for his money as I think the two candidates for worst prime minister in Israel's history. She knew, she was told it's coming, and she basically refused to act first. And even when it happened, Israel was really there. There was a serious concern at the time. Now we're looking at it as a historical thing. There was a serious concern that it could be the end of Israel, and she had a recommendation to use nuclear weapons against Egypt. I think that would have been a game changer for the better in the Middle East. She didn't, and Israel has shown more and more weakness in every war that it has fought since 1967. And yeah, let's go back to hashtag believe them. When Israel's enemies say they're going to do something, say they're working towards Israel destruction, say that basically they'll do it when they can, and until then they will kill as many Jews as possible. Believe them. They are telling the truth. And if you think that their plan is not something you want to see happen, act in order to prevent it. Parting
Exactly.
thoughts, James?
No, you nailed it, Razi, as usual.
Well, uh, Jill Stein. I
Hey,
just the thought of talking about her is I've spent some of today watching her videos. It hasn't been a pleasant day. But as we say, we watch it so we don't have to, although we will show some clips of her. That is the topic of today's episode
take your
of the
stomach
reality
medicine.
show. Huh?
Take your stomach medicine if you haven't. They will be playing clips of Jill's time.
And tomorrow on the Daily Objective, I'm joined by Alex to talk about the Tamimi terror family, a family that has gained some prominence in pro-Palestinian, i.e., anti-Israel circles. And of course, today at 8, 2 hours from now, Michael Leibowitz asks Dr. Peikoff, make sure if you're not a member, become a member of the channel or of ARCUK through the website, and you will have access to that video, to yesterday's video, and to the 5 videos that will be posted 4 videos that will, I really, will put people's contributions to good use. I'm going to take a course on counting. Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you in a couple minutes.
Be safe.